It was late afternoon when they returned to the house. Soon the reddish hue on the horizon would be swallowed by darkness. Alex watched the poor peasants returning from their work, carrying their tools. He noticed they turned away when they saw Sergei, for they did not recognize Alex and did not know he was their new master. Norobod's domain stretched out of sight. Alex considered the possibility of dividing the lands and the difficulties he would face. His plans could make things better or worse. He could, indeed, assert his ideals of justice on his own lands, though he knew that the struggle would be fought with blood, and fire. He would be an example. But what about the other lords for not wanting to change his order to plundering of neighboring plantations, thus causing the ruin of the lands, relegating the serfs to hunger and a worse form of misery, lack of work? How had his father managed to amass so much land? Lands that stretched out of sight in the vast plain, and those poor peasants remained completely subservient, like beasts of burden. How long would the peasants remain dominated by an absolutist regime? Sergei, observing the boy's calm and distinguished character, said nothing to him about the half of the property that belonged to him. He, too, had patience. He would know at the right moment to assert his rights and authority over the peasants who worked his lands, maintained by Norobod. Let the young man continue to think he was the absolute owner. Alex, innocently, had no idea that he had barely traversed more than half the land his father had left him. That evening, Alex and Semyon chatted animatedly. The women had retired and could now discuss their projects without interruption. "I've traveled the lands, comrade. I never thought our empire would be so vast." "You're a powerful landowner, Alex, by a twist of fate," Semyon smiled. "None of this has any value to me, Semyon, except the right to put into practice what we have. Discuss in theory, but for this to be effective, we must begin to value the poor muzhik who lives, with his mentality, in the last century. I realize this today, seeing them like animals returning from the pasture at dusk, to their filthy huts. Poor creatures turned into animals by power, and to think that we are children of the same homeland, owners also of the fertile soil of Mother Russia," said the aristocrat, saturated with communist ideas. "Will you have the courage, Alex, to convert your property into wage labor and equal rights? Semyon, my arguments are not in vain, nor are my ideas an illusion. I've always dreamed of equality, since I was a child." The professor admired his friend, his audacity, intelligence, and courage, because he, equally idealistic, had nothing to lose. He was just a teacher, the son of mujiks who had once owned small property, only to become ruined. He had no material possessions, only the excellent education he had received, which enabled him to earn a living with dignity, his lectures and newspaper publications, which he sent to the capital. For him, being a revolutionary was easy. When you have material losses to lose, courage must be redoubled. Alex, I do admire you for carrying out your plan. As for me, I have nothing to lose. I have given up, by force of circumstances, even a title and nobility that was offered to me, to fulfill this ideal, which will surely consume my days, to free the Russian people from ignorance and illiteracy. There, a great merit. I consider you richer than the owner of all these lands. Don't ever want to know the origins of such an empire, my dear. There are facts that intrigue me, and I won't rest until I learn everything." "What do you mean, Alex?" "Things, events, Semyon, involving my sister's death and the disappearance of her unborn daughter. Someone will answer for this crime. I promise you that," the heir said with clenched fist, showing the pain in his heart. "Speaking of this tragic event, Alex, my master sent me a letter informing me that the wizard Dmitri neighbor will be arriving here soon. Do you remember him? That crazy master? Are you still in touch with him?" "Yes, that's right. We're always in touch." "What has he been doing lately?" "He has delved into the occult and hypnosis, topics that I am also passionate about. We could say he's become a ghostbuster, a magnetizer of minds that live on the edge of madness, like nervous girls subject to hysterical fits. Don't tell me Professor has finally embraced such ideas, which are posed by the scientists of the highest order." Alex burst out laughing, recalling the endless discussions that Professor Dmitri's actions had sparked at the university. He's always surprising us with his arguments. Not only has he accepted them, but he also bases his theses on scientific grounds, seeking to prove them. His thesis has won him many enemies and attracted countless admirers. He corresponds with adherents of these ideas in other countries, expanding and strengthening his arguments. I'm anxious for him to arrive. I took the liberty of inviting him. I hope he doesn't make a bad impression on your mother. On the contrary, Semyon, he could be of great help to her, if he has control over the spirits. Perhaps he could put an end to the superstitious beliefs that are spreading around here. Worse than the condition of servitude is the superstitious belief that blinds and breeds superstitious fanaticism. Alex and Semyon continued talking until late, unaware that someone else was listening to their conversations. It was Karine, a servant in the house, friend and lover Sergei, who had stayed there on purpose, to keep an eye on the two friends and Alex's movements. The woman hadn't missed a word of their conversation, and reported everything to her companion the next day. This was how Sergei kept himself informed of everything that happened at the Norobod mansion. Karine was his most faithful witness to the events that took place there and the decisions made. No one had ever suspected her, because besides being a skilled actress, she knew how to masterfully disguise her clandestine connection with the overseer. She presented herself modestly, subserviently, and never opened her mouth to say anything but her eyes. Her green eyes seemed like two torches of fire, so lively and expressive. The spy occupied rooms reserved for servants and cherished the ambition of one day becoming the mistress of that mansion. She belonged to the class of people who never waste time, always cautious, acting stealthily, waiting for the exact moment to strike. This was how the two fed their passion for power, enjoying a long, clandestine coexistence, at the cost of intrigue, evil, and the hatred that satisfied their souls. Often, the simplest and seemingly expressionless people are those who best understand the characters around them and know how to distinguish them. These are the hidden mysteries revealed to the learned and prudent, of which Jesus speaks in the Gospel of Matthew. Such was the gentle Katienka, whose simplicity and modesty enchanted everyone. The girl had won the good graces of Mrs. Norobod, who did everything to have her in her company. Maria Norobod noted the girl's dedication and importance to the Sumarokov children, the care she had for Mayra, without making any demands, but cherished the dream that this gentle maiden would one day serve her as a lady-in-waiting. The prudent nanny of the Sumarokov children, on the few occasions she had seen Karine, quickly realized that the woman was untrustworthy, and no matter how much she tried to get close, Katienka cleverly placed a barrier between them. During this entire time, it had been impossible for Karine to approach the Izba. In fact, the Sumarokov children, without exception, seemed to have woven a clever scheme to keep the girl away. They played nasty jokes on her, and she finally gave up and left the Sumarokov family out her snooping, although she continued to watch them assiduously, not missing any of their steps. After Norobod's death, mourning was kept according to friendship and sympathy of the deceased, and in the case of Norobod, he was soon relegated to oblivion. Life on the property was finally returning to normal. A festive date was approaching to celebrate Sasha Alexnovich's birthday and his entry into local society. On that day, Mrs. Norobod needed Katienka to help her prepare the dinner she would soon host for her neighbors and important people. They mobilized the labor of some women to prepare the sumptuous dinner, which would be served by candlelight in rich silver candlesticks. Floral decorations spread joy and aroma throughout the house. They made new clothes for the servants. The matron wanted everyone to be beautiful and well-dressed. They were preparing the ballroom for a sumptuous ball. The most important families and authorities were invited. 26th the party of Sasha Alexnovich. Sasha Alexnovich was in her teens, a beautiful young woman, but very lively and flirtatious like her mother. With Norobod's death and Alex's rise to power, Sumarokov's children had cultivated certain privileges. They had grown into elegant, well-mannered, and handsome young men. Anyone who saw them now, tall and well-dressed, speaking fluently thanks to Semlin's lessons, wouldn't even realize they were the children of poor peasants. Nikolai, in particular, stood out for his delicate manners and brilliant intelligence, albeit somewhat affected. His poetic soul enchanted, and he was always accompanied by admirers who listened to him with interest. They didn't even consider his humble status, a condition Alex made a point of ignoring. As long as he owned the place, People had to respect him, especially because his mother's fondness for Mayra made any effort worthwhile. Mrs. Norobod had a beautiful dress made especially for her to wear at the party, showering her with excessive pampering. Alex's attitude. In relation to Mayra, it was no different. The attention he lavished on the girl caused Sasha, his daughter, genuine jealousy. She and her mother hated Mayra, who, with each passing day, became more beautiful. That evening, the hall was packed. Some guests who had known Norobod's daughter and still remember her, and the tragedy commented on Mayra's resemblance to the deceased, assuming she was a relative. Mayra was very gracious, helping to welcome the guests and serving drinks. Feeling the target of stares, she withdrew a little, looking for Katienka. It's the living portrait of Sasha Norobodvisky. The incident attracted so much attention that Sumarokov asked Katienka to remove her from the hall against the wishes of the owners of the house. She's too young to be awake, he tried to explain, wary and suspicious. Let her stay, Sumarokov. I'll take responsibility for her tonight. Mrs. Norobod insisted. Papacha, let me stay. I can't sleep, he complained. Reluctantly, Sumarokov had to agree. He and his sons remained in a corner, aloof, watching the arrival of the landowners, who approached in elegant carriages and rich festive attire. Professor Simeon and his newly arrived master were talking in a corner of the room, and, without a doubt, the subject was the one that most excited the wizard neighbor, ghosts. Sonia had still not managed to captivate the professor with her charms, despite his advances and indiscreet glances. She was stunning that night. She wore a red velvet dress that clung to her shapely body, making her a beautiful woman, and her dark eyes shone like never before. With Alex's rise on the farm, the men now respected her because of her husband's position and his kindness to everyone. Sonia felt belittled because the men on the farm steered clear of her, despite her charms and their now more discreet glances. Alex treated her with indifference, and her life was dull and boring. That night, her goal was to win over Sumarokov or Semyon. She tried to approach Semyon and the wizard neighbor first, even though the wizard was a bit old for her. The flirtatious lady joined in the conversation, carrying a glass of drink in her hand. Oh, what interesting topic keeps them away from women. The master psychologist neighbor, accustomed to observing human behavior, was enchanted with the girl's manner. Despite the age difference, they could spend the night talking. Because they're on the farm, Sonia was a rare species, free from superstition, and she spoke about ghosts, weaving commentary, devoid of any beliefs or fears. This enchanted the master, who exploited her as he saw fit. While Sonia told the magician everything she knew about Sasha's ghost, Semyon took the opportunity to leave them. I'll leave you, beautiful Sonia, to keep the magician company. Don't let him hypnotize you. And he went off in search of new guests and new students for the public school they planned to set up on the farm. But first, he went to atone for Katienka and see what she was doing. He had been enchanted by the girl. As he crossed the corridor, he encountered two green eyes examining him closely. It was Karine, one of the castle's maids, who already knew the young man, his room, and his clothes. They exchanged a meaningful glance, but Semyon, despite being impressed by her eyes, continued walking as if he hadn't seen her. He approached Katienka, who was leaning against a railing of a counter, looking tired. She had worked hard to make sure the dinner met Mrs. Norobod's expectations. Semyon admired the girl's simplicity and beauty, but he never had the opportunity to speak to her. She was always busy and seemed to have no eyes for him, although he noticed that his presence disturbed her. He never knew if it was shyness or if she actually felt some attraction for him. He preferred her company. None of the society girls who came to Sasha's party could compare to Kaunka, who had already won his heart. Katienka, you look tired. You guessed it, Professor Simeon, the work in the kitchen and organizing the tables. I confess, they left me exhausted. Sit down. He offered her a chair that was. Close. Thank you. Are you having fun, Professor? Very much. It's a beautiful party. They played a polka, and couples lined up to dance. It's a pity you're tired, because I would be immensely honored to dance with you, Katienka. Don't worry about me. Professor, there are so many society ladies who would like to dance, and it wouldn't be right for you to dance with me, a servant. Karmica's graceful manner moved him, and none of the well-dressed young ladies in the hall interested him. He preferred to stay there, in that corner, talking to her. However, his joy was short-lived. He was about to answer her when a delirious scream came from the opposite side of the hall. All the dancing couples hovered as if by magic. In the middle of the hall stood Sasha's ghost, livid-bloodied, terrifying everyone. Thus, the party ended in screams and weeping, as if the world were ending. No one knew exactly how the commotion began. The poor dead woman suddenly appeared out of nowhere, seeking relief from her suffering. Her tragic death wasn't enough. She had no peace. The guests left in silence. The lights in the mansion slowly went out, and of the guests, only those who were staying there remained, including the wizard neighbor, who had never seen such a spectacle. Instinctively, Karmic looked for Mayra. She guessed that something had happened to her too. "Where is Mayra?" he asked his brothers. No one had seen her. "Mr. Sumarokov, Mayra has disappeared. No matter how hard I look, I can't find her," she exclaimed in distress. And everyone started looking for the girl around the house. Fortunately, the moon was full, its brightness making things more visible. Neighbor was perplexed by the unusual phenomenon. He wouldn't leave that place until he had solved the case. He promised himself this. There was a vast field for his research. For some time they searched the rooms of the house, calling for Mayra. Following her instincts, Karmic went to the Izba, accompanied by Iulián, Sumarokov's son. Finally, they found her there. The girl was huddled in a corner of the house, red, burning with fever, and deliriously disjointed. "My God! Poor thing! My poor child!" the girl exclaimed, hugging her. "How did she manage to get here all alone?" Mayra was disfigured, pale, with sunken eyes, her face contorted with anguish. "We need a doctor," said Iulián, her brother. It wasn't long before Sumarokov entered the house. The Izba was soon filled with curious onlookers. "She has a fever and must have seen the ghost," Sumarokov explained. The wizard neighbor also approached. "If you'll allow me, I'd like to be alone with the girl. Perhaps I can rid her of this illness." Sumarokov knew he was a hypnotist and possessed certain powers, but he didn't trust leaving his daughter in the hands of a stranger. "I'll stay." All right. Father can stay, but I ask the others to leave, please." They left the small room, but Mrs. Norobod and Karmic remained in the kitchen, waiting for a signal from Sumarokov. It was almost midnight, and outside the moon remained as mysterious as it was splendid. Neighbor sat on the edge of the bed, concentrated, and began to pass his right hand over his head, without touching it, then over his eyelids. "How are you feeling, girl?" Mayra didn't respond. Her mouth was pursed, as if she was very scared. "Don't be afraid. I'm here to help you." Neighbor's deep voice soothed Sumarokov's tension. His father found a chair and sat down. He, too, seemed hypnotized. His eyelids grew heavy. Neighbor, no matter how hard he tried, couldn't calm the girl, despite using every known technique to hypnotize her. After a few more attempts, he managed to calm her down a bit, suggesting she fall asleep. He began to wipe her sweaty forehead with a handkerchief and advised her father, "Let her stay as she is. Don't lift a finger to wake her. She'll sleep like this until dawn." He made the same recommendation to Karmic. Both, obedient to the teacher, agreed to sleep in the living room, near the stove so as not to wake her. Neighbor left the Izba accompanied by Mrs. Norobod, who thanked him for his intervention and explained how much she cared for the girl. Sonia had told him that the ghost was her daughter and began to pay her close attention. The embittered woman found him a relief, and his strong presence gave her security and comfort. The magician began to explain the cases he knew of regarding apparitions and how he worked to help penitent spirits, taking the opportunity to gain the unfortunate woman's good graces. Her techniques were a little interest to her because they seemed remote, too remote to alleviate her pain, her longing. Karmic modestly intervened with the great religiosity that her soul possessed. Against the appearance of spirits, the best thing is our prayers. They only want our prayers to calm down. Mrs. Norobod nodded in agreement, but neighbor, unfortunately, believed that simply applying his techniques was enough to ward off evil. Not wanting to offend the professor, she decided to listen to him. interested in finding a solution, since the priest's ideas did not satisfy her on this painful subject. Mrs. Norobod began to recount the strangest events that had befallen her husband since their daughter's death, the disappearance of their granddaughter on a tragic night, then the apparitions during the harvest, and her husband's strange death, preceded by an epileptic seizure, after learning that Sumrokov's daughter had also seen her daughter's ghost. 27. The story of Sasha by his mother. The magician began to seriously investigate the lives of those people and the recent events that preceded Sasha's death. It was natural that Mrs. Norobod would shy away from telling him the whole truth, which was very painful for her. Patiently, Neighbor tried to get something more out of him before resorting to hypnosis, a method he used with extreme caution. Mrs. Norobod, allow me one more question, the answer to which will be very helpful. This isn't just idle curiosity. It's part of the treatment and mental health of that poor girl who, like your husband, sees spirits and feels unwell. We need to know the cause of this discomfort. Only you, with knowledge of the tragedy, can help her. Make an effort. I know it's painful. The scientist wizard knew how to touch her heart. She loved the girl so much, she couldn't resist helping him. He seemed to act responsibly. Then he began to speak of the facts that were extremely painful to him. Speak, Mrs. Norobod. You will feel much better. First, she had a crying fit, an outburst he provoked, a prelude to all healing. Then she gradually calmed down, persuaded by the magician's arguments. Catharsis was part of her liberation. Everything was blocked. The suffering stored deep within her soul was crippling her life and robbing her of all joy. Finally, she began. Sasha was a shy and kind girl. When she turned 14, she began to show interest in boys, like all young women her age. She had been introduced to several young men from society, and my husband wanted her to marry Count Philip, the son of a former nobleman, a campaign colleague, as agreed between them. Sasha was sad because of this and cried in secret. She feared her father and kept quiet about her feelings. One day, I found her talking to a young peasant, recently hired to work alongside many other young men and some families. I immediately guessed my daughter was in love. Her little eyes would shine with happiness when she saw the young man heading to the rye fields. The peasant's work began before dawn, and they only returned at night, to a hard life with no hope of improvement. They were watched by Sergei, the farm overseer, and by some of his henchmen to ensure none of them ran away. We were still living in the final days of serfdom, although here on our farm it never ceased to exist. Many remained, preferring to receive food and housing rather than wages, hoping that by the end of the decade, get their share of land, according to the law of our village. Mrs. Norobod paused to sip her tea, as if gathering courage to continue talking about those tragic events. Neighbor listened silently. The woman continued, after drinking the tea.